Imagine, if you can, a perfectly ordinary Saturday night. Friends, dinner, plans for the rest of the evening. Just the quiet backdrop of a typical weekend in a familiar town.
And then, just like that, everything changes. That normalcy is completely shattered.
Yeah, utterly destroyed. Today we're exploring the chilling reality of the Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom murders. It's a case so brutal, so dehumanizing, it really forces you to confront the very darkest corners of human capability.
It really does. It's often called the most brutal crime you've never heard of.
And that's what we're doing today, looking into the material surrounding this unthinkable horror, tracing the timeline from an ordinary Saturday night in Knoxville, Tennessee, to a discovery that still shocks even veteran police.
Let's start with them. Channon Christian was just 21, a student at the University of Tennessee. By all accounts, vibrant, bright, successful, caused absolutely no trouble.
Just a young woman starting her life. And Christopher Newsom, 23, a skilled trim carpenter. He was a talented former baseball player, too. Apparently had an infectious smile.
Yeah. And they were pretty new as a couple. Their relationship had just started a couple of months earlier, November 2006. Full of promise, you know.
So Saturday, January 6, 2007, they're just having a normal weekend day together, attended a dinner party at a friend's apartment near the UT campus.
Right. Typical Saturday night. As the evening wrapped up, late, maybe between 10 and 11 p.m., they left in Shannon's Toyota 4Runner.
And the plan was just to visit another friend.
But they took a wrong turn, got lost.
And that's when it happened. It was in a parking lot near the Washington Ridge or Cherry Street apartments in Knoxville that their lives just took this horrifying, irreversible turn.
Horrifying is the word. That's where they were carjacked, at gunpoint, by Lemaricus Davidson and his half-brother, Letalvis Cobbins.
And everything available points to this being just random, a random act of violence.
It seems so. A horrifying moment of opportunity seized by their attackers. They were forced into Shannon's SUV.
Forced into her own vehicle.
And driven to a rental house nearby, 2316 Chipman Street in Knoxville. This house, it was occupied by Davidson, Cobbins, George Thomas, and Vanessa Coleman.
Okay, so 4 people already there.
And reports indicate Eric Boyd was also present shortly after Channon and Chris were brought there. So potentially 5 perpetrators involved from early on.
Right, and from the moment they entered that house, the nightmare began.
Immediately. Both Channon and Christopher were subjected to brutal torture and sexual assault. Right away.
And this wasn't brief, was it? The accounts from the trials, it sounds like it went on for hours.
Several excruciating hours, yes. Inflicted by multiple individuals in that house.
Now, before we go any further into the timeline of what happened inside that house, we really have to issue a strong and unwavering content warning.
Yes, absolutely. The details of what Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom endured they're profoundly disturbing, extremely graphic.
And we want to be clear, we're including these facts, not for sensationalism, but because they are crucial. Crucial to understanding the full, unbearable horror of this crime and the depth of suffering inflicted upon these 2 young people.
Our aim here is simply to provide a complete factual account, drawing from the available information. It's about honoring their memory by truthfully exposing the brutality they face so their story isn't just heard, but fully grasped.
Okay, so inside that house on Chipman Street, the nightmare intensified rapidly. The trial testimony, the forensic evidence, it lays out an unimaginable torment.
It does. Sometime in the early morning hours, this would be Sunday, January 7th, Christopher Newsom was separated from Channon.
And testimony pointed to Eric Boyd being involved in this part.
Yes. George Thomas specifically testified seeing Boyd with Christopher. Christopher was blindfolded, bound, still at the house at that point.
The details of how he was restrained, they're awful.
They are. Hands tied behind his back, feet bound, a sock forced into his mouth, a hooded sweatshirt pulled over his head and secured tightly with shoestrings.
And the forensics confirmed he was sexually assaulted as well.
Yes. The medical examiner testified Christopher was sodomized with an object. Just brutal.
He was then forced to walk barefoot to a remote area near some railroad tracks.
And the evidence found later, the dirt and mud on his bare feet, tragically corroborated that agonizing journey. There was also a mangled dog leash found near his body.
Suggesting it might have been used to force him along.
A truly horrific detail.
And then, Christopher was brutally murdered.
The medical examiner testified the fatal shot was likely first, a contact wound right to his left temple. Massive brain injury.
Likely first, meaning there were more shots.
Yes, subsequent shots struck him in the neck and back.
And even after he was dead, the horror didn't stop.
No. In a final, horrific act of desecration, his body was wrapped in a comforter, doused with gasoline, and set on fire.
Unbelievable. Were there any witnesses to this part?
Well, accounts do include a witness report. Someone hearing 3 distinct pops, like gunshots, around 1:45 a.m. that Sunday morning, coming from the direction of those tracks.
1:45 a.m., so later that same day, Sunday, January 7th, around 12:20 p.m.
That's when a passerby discovered Christopher Newsom's burned body near the railroad tracks.
And that discovery, that's what initiated the police investigation. But initially, they didn't know he was connected to Channon Christian's disappearance, did they?
No, not yet. That connection came later. Meanwhile, back at the Chipman Street house, Channon Christian's ordeal, it was still going on. For many more agonizing hours.
Continuing while Chris was already gone.
Yes. Letalvis Cobbins' own testimony, combined with the forensic evidence, it paints a picture of sheer brutality. She was beaten, kicked, suffered severe head injuries, bruises all over her body, carpet burns.
And she was restrained, too.
Yes, hands and ankles tied. Details emerged about her being tied to duffel bags filled with weights. Later, tied in what's described as a hog-tied position, using cords ripped from curtains and bedding.
And the sexual assault continued as well.
For hours. The forensic evidence and medical testimony point to what can only be called sexual torture. Injuries consistent with rape, using an object, described as extreme, causing severe trauma. Cobbins testified. He said at one point he untied her hands so she could have some water. And in that moment, Channon spoke to him. She desperately pleaded for her life. She asked about Chris. Cobbins also admitted he had sexual contact with her during her captivity.
And as Sunday night went on, it just didn't stop.
The brutality didn't stop, no. Reports state perpetrators saw her with no clothes on from the waist down. Lemaricus Davidson reportedly tried to choke her in the kitchen. And Vanessa Coleman was reportedly ordered to check Shannon's pulse after that choking attempt. Channon Christian's life was tragically extinguished late Sunday, January 7th, or possibly early Monday, January 8th.
And the way it happened, it was deliberate cruelty until the very end.
Absolutely. While she was still alive, her attackers poured Clorox bleach down her throat and over her body, including her genital area, a deliberate, cold-blooded attempt to destroy DNA evidence.
While she was still alive.
Yes. Then, a plastic bag was placed over her head, her mouth taped shut, her body bound tightly. She was forced, still alive, into a large kitchen trash can. And that is where she died.
From suffocation.
The sheer depravity. There are no words for that level of cruelty.
Incomprehensible cruelty.
So Monday, January 8th, 2007, investigators are still piecing together Chris Newsom's death, and Channon Christian's family, obviously distraught by her disappearance, reports her missing.
Right, and they had something crucial, a GPS device in her stolen Toyota 4Runner. They used it to track the vehicle's last known location, and this piece of information led authorities directly to the abandoned SUV. And that then led police to a chilling revelation, didn't it?
It did. The location data pointed them directly back to that same address, 2316 Chipman Street.
The same house, the place where Christopher had likely been held, now definitively linked to Shannon's disappearance as well.
Exactly. So, armed with a search warrant, investigators entered 2316 Chipman Street on January 9th, 2007.
And inside, they found what they must have feared.
A scene of unspeakable horror, confirming their worst fears. There, in a large kitchen trash can, police discovered Channon Christian's body. The crime scene was thoroughly documented. Every piece of evidence gathered would be critical in linking the individuals involved to these heinous acts.
So, based on that evidence, finding Shannon's body, the investigation moved incredibly fast.
Very rapidly. Police launched an immediate manhunt for everyone suspected to be involved.
And the arrests started coming quickly.
They did. January 9th, the same day they found Channon, Lemaricus Davidson, the alleged ringleader, was apprehended. The very next day, January 10th, his half-brother, Letalvis Cobbins, was arrested in Kentucky.
So they'd fled the state.
Cobbins had, yes. And the net kept widening. On January 11th, George Thomas, a friend of Cobbins, was also arrested in Kentucky, followed by Vanessa Coleman, Cobbins' girlfriend, who surrendered to authorities in Kentucky on January 12th.
So that's 4. What about Eric Boyd?
Eric Boyd, the 5th associate, was arrested January 19th in Nashville. Now, initially it was on unrelated federal charges.
Not immediately for the murders.
Not immediately. But he was soon definitively linked to the murders of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. And at this point, the awful scale of the crime and the number of people involved really began to fully emerge.
5 people involved in this horror.
And with the arrests made, the long, arduous journey for justice began. A grand jury indicted Letalvis, Cobbins, Lemaricus, Davidson, George Thomas, and Vanessa Coleman on charges including kidnapping, robbery, rape, and murder.
What about Eric Boyd again? If he was arrested on federal charges first.
Right. Eric Boyd, the 5th person implicated, initially faced those federal charges relating to the carjacking and the stolen SUV. He was convicted federally in 2008, received an 18-year sentence for being an accessory after the fact to the carjacking and possessing the stolen vehicle.
Accessory after the fact, meaning he helped after the crime.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Helping the perpetrators after the crime happened, even if not involved in the initial act itself. His state murder charges wouldn't come until much later.
Okay, so the focus initially was on the other 4 for the state charges. Their trial started in 2008.
Correct. Lemaricus Davidson was first. In May 2008, convicted on multiple counts: kidnapping, rape, murder. He received the death sentence.
Death sentence for Davidson.
Yes. And in June 2010, consecutive sentences for the kidnapping and rape were formally added. Then, August 2009, Letalvis Cobbins, the half-brother, also convicted. Kidnapping, rape, murder.
His sentence.
Life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Okay. And George Thomas.
By December 2009, George Thomas, Cobbins' friend, also convicted of kidnapping, rape, and murder. Similar sentence. Life in prison without parole, plus additional years for other offenses.
Right. So Davidson, Cobbins, Thomas, all convicted of the major crimes. What about Vanessa Coleman?
Her first trial was May 2010. Now, she was acquitted of first-degree murder but found guilty on lesser charges. By July 2010, she received an effective sentence of 53 years.
53 years, but then there was a huge twist, wasn't there?
Major legal twist, yes. In 2011, all 4 state convictions, Davidson, Cobbins, Thomas, and Coleman, were initially set aside, overturned.
Why?
Due to what was determined to be judicial misconduct during the original trials, the judge involved had issues. Public outrage in the community, as you can imagine, it seemed like justice was slipping away.
But it wasn't the end of the story legally.
No. Justice moved slowly but ultimately decisively. By May 25, 2012, the Tennessee State Supreme Court stepped in. They overturned the orders for retrials for Davidson and Cobbins.
Meaning?
Meaning they essentially reinstated their original convictions and sentences. Davidson's death sentence and Cobbins' life sentence stood.
Okay, so their sentence were back. But Coleman and Thomas still faced retrials.
They did. Retrials happened for them in 2013. George Thomas was again convicted and received the same life sentence as before.
And Vanessa Coleman, her case was reevaluated.
Yes. This time she was convicted of facilitation charges. Facilitation of especially aggravated kidnapping, robbery, and rape.
Facilitation. That sounds different. Less severe.
It's complex. Facilitation charges essentially mean she was found guilty of helping make the crime easier to commit, rather than being a primary actor in the most severe parts herself. Her new sentence became effectively 35 years, served at 100%, meaning no parole on that portion, plus the remainder of her original sentence on convictions that were not overturned. It's a complex structure, but it basically made her ineligible for release until approximately 2055.
So still a very long time. Did the appeals stop there?
Oh no. Appeals continued for years after that. In 2016, for instance, the state Supreme Court affirmed Davidson's death sentence again.
And Eric Boyd, the 5th person. We heard about his federal sentence, but what about state murder charges?
Right. Finally, in January 2018, Eric Boyd, who had served his federal time, faced new state-level charges for kidnapping, robbery, rape, and murder in connection with the case.
So years later, he's facing the primary charges.
Years later, yes. He was convicted in August 2019. The following month, September 17, 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole for his role.
Life without parole for Boyd as well.
Correct. So in the end, all 5 individuals faced severe consequences. And despite numerous appeals from all of them over the years, their convictions for these horrific crimes have largely been upheld.
It was such a long and complex legal battle over a decade, but the impact of what happened to Channon and Chris, it just went so far beyond the courtroom, didn't it? It profoundly affected East Tennessee.
Absolutely. This case gripped the community in a unique way. Many people observed that Channon and Chris were just average young people, from backgrounds that seemed, well, relatively safe or protected. They weren't involved in anything risky.
And that created this terrifying, relatable thought, didn't it? That could be me, or that could be my kids. Just being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
That randomness is maybe one of the most chilling aspects. It shattered any illusion that such brutality only happens in specific circumstances or to specific types of people. It forced the community to confront its own vulnerability.
And the community response was huge.
Immense. Vigils, fundraisers, support groups formed. People just came together in their grief, shock, and anger. The house itself, 2316 Chipman Street, became this potent symbol of that horror.
What happened to the house?
Well, in an act to sort of reclaim that space, prevent it from becoming some macabre landmark, it was eventually demolished. And later, a memorial was placed on the property. It was thoughtfully purchased by Waste Connections, actually, to ensure it wouldn't be used inappropriately. The Channon Gail Christian Memorial Scholarship helps a female student from Farragut High School attend the University of Tennessee, honoring Shannon's connection there. For Chris, there's the Christopher Newsom Memorial Tournament. It's a Little League baseball event held annually in his community of halls. And a memorial scholarship is also given each year to a graduating Hall's high school student, remembering his love for baseball.
Keeping their spirits alive through things they loved. Now, this case also brought up some difficult public conversations, didn't it? Particularly around race.
It did. Given the defendants were black and the victims were white, some groups and sources attempted to frame it as a racially motivated hate crime. There was also criticism from some about what they saw as a lack of national media attention compared to other cases.
But that wasn't the view of everyone involved.
No. Other sources consistently report that the police, the prosecutors, and, crucially, the victims' own families rejected that hate crime framing. Their consistent view was that this was an opportunistic, terribly brutal act committed by individuals described as having, life of crime and being unstable.
Right. And we're just presenting those differing perspectives as they were reported, not endorsing any specific view.
Exactly. Just reporting what was presented in the information available.
Beyond the grief and the legal battles and these difficult conversations, there were also really tangible effects on the community's sense of safety, weren't there?
Oh, absolutely. An increased concern about personal safety was widely reported. You saw mentions of a rise in applications for gun permits and a noticeable rise in enrollment in women's self-defense classes in the area. That feeling of vulnerability had a lasting impact.
Understandable. Ultimately, the story of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom is just. It's a harrowing reminder of the depths human cruelty can reach.
It truly is. But it's also, I think, a testament to a community's resilience. The refusal to forget, and that relentless pursuit of justice, however long and complex that journey turned out to be.
As you reflect on this case, it really forces you to consider how a single wrong turn, just a random, senseless encounter, can change absolutely everything in an instant.
It does. And it underscores how important it is to remember victims like Channon and Chris, not just for the horrific way they died, but for the vibrant lives they lived.
And for the community spirit their memory continues to inspire, even through such darkness.
Exactly.
So it leaves you with this thought, doesn't it? What does it mean for a community when the greatest threat appears to stem from pure, unadulterated randomness?
A chilling question to ponder.
If this story moved you, if you believe that crimes like this and the stories of their victims must be remembered,
then please take a moment, like this content, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth, and subscribe for more factual reports on the cases that shaped our world.
And we always welcome your thoughts and respectful discussions, so please leave your comments below. Your support helps us ensure these vital stories are never forgotten.